Welcome back to the Exalted Podcast. I am excited to have my friend Louise Stanton on with me today. We have just bonded over our love for Jesus and health and just showing women that we can invite God into our health journey. So she is just such a like-minded individual, but a little bit about her is she is experienced in ministry, nonprofit, organizational leadership, and she holds a degree in biblical studies and organizational leadership. She's also a certified wellness instructor and the founder of Uprise, which is a fun community for women through wellness, hiking, and retreats. And you're just a girl after my own heart with that hiking. So welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so excited to meet you. And just even over the last couple of weeks, like, oh, here we are. So
I know.
New friend.
It's so fun. It's so fun when you can just meet someone and you just connect on this deeper level. When you're doing kingdom work like that, and when you just have a passion for changing the world, it's like you've known each other for years. At least that's how I feel.
I know, totally so true. It's like, oh, my husband's always like, oh, who's your new best friend now? Like, who did you just meet? And now you're bonded for life.
Right, exactly.
But you just know it when you know it.
So, right. And that's how it works, like in the kingdom too, like the body of Christ, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So take me back to Uprising. Take me back to when the Lord started stirring this vision for this community in your heart.
Very good question. I've been sitting here kind of like thinking about this whole thing about journey and transformation. And I know that there's people who say like the seed of your next step is in the step that you're already in. And so I like thinking about that because it's kind of hard for me to like really unwind where it began.
Sure.
But I can say when the word uprise came to me, that was after George Floyd was killed and we were in 2020. And I was like sitting home on Independence Day and thinking, what is going on in this world? And what do I need to do? Like, I need to do something, just something. And the tools in my hand are like around wellness and fitness. And there's just always this kind of message that I have that's always about like, be well, like mind, body, soul, and spirit. Like we need to be well in all areas, And so I was like banging around on my computer and thinking maybe I'd start a blog, So I was like looking back at some stuff I'd started in the past. And then I was like, a logo maker. Oh, okay. So let's do a logo. Right. So it actually started with a logo. And I love that. I love this phrase. Yeah. That I've learned in some of my mindful movement practices where it's like we root down to rise up.
Yeah.
And so I just love that phrase. And I love thinking about being rooted in Christ, of course, and then rising up into what he has for us. And so uprise is a play on words in that because it's about us. It's about us coming into the fullness of who we're designed to be and our purpose in this world. But it's also about each other. And I think that as each one of us like becomes whole and lives into our purpose, like we bring people with us. We become the uprise. We become the change that's needed in this world. So,
right. And when you're going through a transformation like that, people start to notice, right? And without even like consciously being aware of it, people are like, I don't know what is different about her, but I want what she has. Not in like a materialistic sense, in like a place of being whole, right? Would you agree with that? Yeah. And then
totally. Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make is, I don't know if this is true for you, but it was true for me. Like even before I was consciously aware of like what the Lord asked me to start.
Yeah.
Once I was consciously aware of it, it was really easy to look back and see how he had been like preparing me and like creating steps that I wasn't even consciously aware of in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, so that was like 2 years ago, plus years ago, 3 years ago now. And this mural that I have painted behind me in my office is inspired after kind of the next surge in that for me. So a year ago at this time, I hiked the Grand Canyon. Rim to Him is what it was called through Revelation Wellness. And it was a rim to rim endurance thing. And we trained for it for like 6 months. Like I had to like get super strong, like actually the strongest and fittest I've ever been in my life. Like I
Right.
actually stuck to a training program. and and then we did it. And
Yeah.
so that day of walking through the canyon was a meditation for me of like Psalm 139. It was like a day
Mm.
long retreat where I was moving my body the entire time
Right.
and yet communing with God and like asking him to review my life and like, where are we now? And like, where are we going? And where would you want me to go? It was just like this whole moving prayer through that whole time. And then to come out on the other side of that Grand Canyon, like
Yeah.
it was fierce. And it was like, even though I was prepared for it, it was nothing but spirit, like taking us out of that mountain,
Yeah.
man. It
Yeah.
was
And those
like,
moments
I
are
gave my
so
body
powerful.
so powerful. Yeah. And then that really like pushed this whole thing into motion after that.
Yeah, that's so good. And I've told you
Mm-hmm.
before that that's on my list is to do that Rim to Him hike because it just sounds incredible. And
Mm-hmm.
I love to hike and I love nature and I always feel the Lord so powerfully in
Yeah.
nature. So what happens next?
Yeah.
You find your logo, the Lord's kind of working on some things, and then what happens?
Yeah. And well, and honestly, picking up skills along the way, because at that time too, I was in pastoral ministry. And I had my certification to teach yoga and particularly like faith yoga. And
Mhm.
then I did a prenatal certification. So I, like was kind of collecting these like skills and like I'm a certified doula. And then I'm in pastoral ministry at a church and like practicing my hospitality gifts and my teaching gifts and like officiating weddings and funerals and pastoral care and like leadership development, like kind of all of these things coming together. So it's like he was shoring up my skills,
Mhm.
And so then it wouldn't be and I got my master's degree. So while I'm doing all this together, it just felt like, I don't know, like this was in process, for me. And
Yeah.
then it just, I have a friend who told me at a different time in my life that sometimes God puts glass in the nest when he wants us to leave and go do something else.
Mm.
So I was starting to notice
Yeah, I
some
have a
glass in
season
the
like that too. Yeah, I have a season like that too, for
yeah.
sure. But the nest is
And I was
comfortable,
trying
and
to figure it
sometimes it's
out.
hard to leave, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially when you've loved what you've done, you love the people that you connected with, and yet you also feel this thing, like pulling you and calling you on. And like at some point, there's like, okay, well, now it's like, I can't not do this,
Right.
even
Yeah.
if it's hard and sad. Yeah.
Yeah. So then what happens next after that? So you're kind of honing these skills, you're putting things together.
Yeah.
The Lord's making the vision more clear. Then what happens?
And then, I mean, honestly, I'm still figuring it out. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Well, aren't
still
we
figuring
all?
it out. So it becomes right. I mean, it started to turn into, what if I experiment? Like what if I just try?
Yeah.
Like what if I just start a 6-week series and we'll call it Kickbox Yoga Chill and have fun and get down. And I got my wellness certification, for fitness, group fitness too. So
Mhm.
I fell in love with kickboxing. And so I was like, okay, let's kickbox. And I had 14 women like sign up and show up the first night that I did
It's
this. Like
so fun.
it was like maybe we couldn't even fit in the space that I rented.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to do a retreat. And my husband and I were at a marriage retreat. And so I asked them if there was any available weekends coming up. Well, the one available weekend was the last weekend of July. And so I hit, okay, reserve that weekend. I guess I'm going to do my first retreat,
That's so fun.
And
Yes.
it's almost just like it's a step to just reserve it and then go, and just
Yeah.
experiment. And that retreat was beautiful and amazing. We had 16 women there, and just like the theme was hearing the voice of God. And so even preparing for that for 3 months, it was like God was taking me on a journey. It was
Yeah.
more than just
Mhm.
other people. It was like he is doing this in me while he's preparing me to give it to others. So
Yeah. And let's talk about that for a
yeah.
second, because I know we talked about this prayer walk that you have in your yard. And I think even
Hmm.
like even people that are walking in their faith, we're so good at doing. And I don't
Mhm.
always believe that all of us are good at just being with the Lord and like spending that
Yeah.
time in his presence. Or maybe if we're doing it, we're actively doing a Bible study and we're actively doing these things. And not that those things are bad, but we're not taking that
Mhm.
time to like be mindful in his presence. Right. So
Mhm.
talk about
Mhm.
this prayer walk that you've been doing. I think that's so important.
Yeah, it really has changed my life, honestly. Taking my because I guess it's just like that feet connection on the ground and like making my cup of coffee and just walking out the door in the morning. Sometimes listening to a meditation or a worship song. It's like me and God are just walking these trees by my house, and I can just like pray back to him, meditate in his presence. Like there's always something like, okay, well, what should I be looking at? Do you want to show me something this morning? And it's
Yes.
turned into much more of a conversation
Mm-hmm.
than like just, and even just like you said, just being in his presence. Like sometimes I just stop and sit and just sit there,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
in the stillness. And it's
Yeah.
just like the breath of God and me together, And so it's honestly, it's like, it's an exploration. It's
Yeah.
just like there about a year ago, that verse, it comes back to me a lot, but take my yoke upon me and learn from me, for I'm humble and gentle of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the versions, it says, let me teach you. And I feel like in the last year, that's been part of the journey of me and God, has been like, I know all the ways I've been taught, like I've been
Yeah.
at 21 is when I surrendered my life to Jesus. So it's been like 20 plus years.
Yeah.
20, I'm 45 now, like I know all the things I've been taught I'm supposed to do. Right.
Yes. Yes.
And yet missing something. Right. And so
Right.
it's like a new exploration for him to say, let me teach you. And it's
Right.
more just like this invitation of like, okay, what do you want to teach me? And there's
Yes.
been times over this last year where like everybody's in bed and I'll be like sitting here with my art journal, like listening to worship music or a sermon and just like drawing and doodling and like art, spending
Mm-hmm.
time in God's presence,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
like
There's so many
he's
ways
like,
to
let
do
me
it.
teach you. Yeah, let
Yeah.
me teach you. And it's much more vulnerable than me being like, this is what I'm going to do to get close to God,
Right.
to let
Mm-hmm.
him guide us. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's so powerful. Like as Americans, especially, I think we are so good at the doing. We're so good at the checklist. We're so good
Hmm.
at, I'm going to do this Bible study or I'm going to read this chapter of the Bible. And again, those things are not bad, but so many
Hmm.
Christians in their faith walk are missing that time in the presence of God. And I
Yeah.
think that's where he
Which is
trains
what
us
then
up.
makes it, yeah. And then that's where the scripture then becomes alive for today, right?
Yes.
It's like waking up to his presence and the other things. Then when we come to the word, it's like, oh, like it's new and fresh and alive again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. And I feel like, I mean, gosh, we could just tie in the bow on the podcast right now and just, I know for me, that is the most important part of my practice that I miss with the Lord, but I also know it's the most
Mhm.
valuable, but for me, it's such a discipline to quiet my mind. And I don't know if you
Yes.
struggle with that, but that's where my struggle comes from, even though I know that's the
Hmm.
thing that is the most fruitful out of all of the good things. That's
Yeah.
where I struggle the most.
And I've been learning over the last few years of like more of a contemplative kind of journey, and like letting that stillness be where I start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I've heard other people talk about it and just like taken one from this teacher, one from that teacher, and one from that teacher, but just like crafted it into my own of like, even if I have to set a timer
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
says,
Yeah.
I'm going to sit here for 60 seconds for stillness and
Yes.
just breathe, just be a human being, and then turn that into prayer and open up. Like, then that stretches longer and longer.
That's
And
so
I
good.
crave longer and longer, but
Mhm.
setting the timer for me like was a huge game changer, because I could
Yes.
never be like, is that enough? When should I stop? What time is it? Are the
Yeah.
kids going to wake up? What if I don't, but I set
Yeah.
the timer and it tells me when I'm done,
That's so good.
and I
That's
listen
so
to
good.
some apps that help guide that. But yeah,
If you're,
I don't think we ever arrive in that.
yeah. And if you are listening to this and you are just wondering, like, how do you start? How do you quiet your mind? I think that tip was so key. Just set a timer. Just start with 60
Mhm.
seconds. And if you don't know how to connect with him, just meditate on his word and then his presence will show up. So I think that's such a good
Mhm.
tidbit. Okay, so what else are you doing? I know you're doing some other really, really fun stuff that you're serving women.
Um, yeah. So again, exploring. Like, this has been less than a year, and
Yeah.
I still, like you were saying, like, people take a while, like they watch for a while. So
Mhm.
I've had some friends come to me and say, okay, now what is this Uprise thing? What are you doing? I've been watching you.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so you've been watching. So yeah, so more experimenting. So tonight, actually, okay, so now I just created this series. So it's a 6-week series called the Courageous Heart series. Um, and I'm trying to find all those elements of mind, body, spirit, soul, all together to strengthen our heart for courage. And so I have different parts of it. So there's this book called The Lord is My Courage by KJ Ramsey.
Mhm.
And she goes through Psalm 23. And um, okay, maybe I should pause here and say, I love to minister to everybody, like serve everybody.
Yeah.
But people who've been broken and beat up and abused and hurt and like gone through the gamut, like,
Mhm.
you're my people.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
like I
beautiful.
have it's like, you're my people. And so this book, she goes through church hurt that she's been through. She goes through, mishandling of scripture. She goes through a bunch of her personal journey, walking through disabilities. And I myself have had abusive relationships. I've had church hurt. I've been divorced.
Yeah.
I've like come from a family of addiction. Like I know what it's like. And I think sometimes it's like people see my smiley exterior
Mhm.
and would think, oh, think life is just easy for her.
Right.
And it's not. There are still things that like have to overcome daily, and accepting that those limitations are mine has been a gift. So anyway, just all that to say, like, it also kind of gives my message a place too, of just like helping find healing
Yeah.
in our journeys and our walk, to go through Psalm 23 in a meditative way, to read KJ Ramsey's book, The Lord is My Courage,
Yes, so good.
and to do mind, body, spirit movement along with it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so there's like a yoga class on Monday nights, and we're doing the book club as a part of that. And then we move into prayer and then movement, and it's just much more of a chill, relaxing kind of like, because rest, like, I think our
Mhm.
courage starts also in rest. We need to have rest for our souls. And then I'm doing a move it class on Wednesday mornings virtually. And so we're sweating and doing HIIT workouts from home on this virtual thing, which is a new thing for me to lead, but it's actually really, really fun. Because then we strengthen our heart through getting that blood pumping, lifting weights. Yes, we can, sweat and get stronger. And then one of my other goals in this, so I have a connection night tomorrow night, which I'm calling a navigation night. So it's a time for a community to come together and kind of discern, like, what is your next step. So, and I want to call it navigation because I think as God has like leads us on this path, it's not a straight walk. It's a
Yeah.
navigation. It's
Mhm.
walking with him. It's figuring out step by step. And so um I'm really excited about that tomorrow night. So it's like a group coaching experience where we can have some content to chew on, have discussion, and also have kind of tools to help people kind of develop their next step.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're
Yeah.
leading some hiking events too, right?
Yes, always a hiking. So we do a hike meetup once a month. And actually the next one is coming up this week as well. So it's kind of a lot this week, but we like to meet at just different places. It's really casual. I like keeping that very easy entry point for people to just come, be around other people, and just like walk side by side, which always opens up conversation.
Yeah,
And
it does.
you
Just being
know,
fellowship. Yeah.
just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
So,
great.
and yeah, I like I said, it's just kind of like it's opening up. And one of my passions that I just feel like has come from me is like, as I found my voice, it's like I don't need it anymore. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like now it's time to give it away to others.
Yeah.
And so like I really love to like support other women businesses, other women who are living in their uprise. And so this month we're also partnering with a local business called Nap Time, and she has aromatherapy and all this kind of cool stuff in her bookstore. And she has an oil called the oil of gladness. And ironically, it's like she has Psalm 23 like written on it, which is really cool. And so like as we're going through this together, like then there's an essential oil that you can like remind yourself, you know, that God has given us a spirit of, you know, instead of a spirit of despair, an oil of gladness. Like he
That's so
loves
good.
us. So there's that sensory thing, and it supports her business. And then I met this woman who's starting a home for girls who've been sexually trafficked in the Twin Cities area, and they're like 13 to 17, starting this from a vision from scratch. And I met her, and so she's going to come to our navigation night, and then Uprise is going to like give back to her ministry.
Love it.
Yeah. So we're like hearing her story and also supporting her do her Uprise. So
yeah. I'll have to get in contact with her because I know someone that does the same thing, but they do it for adult women, but they're always looking for resources to be connected with. So we should definitely connect those two afterwards, because a lot of times, so I do a lot of work in trafficking. If you've ever heard any of my podcasts, like there's a ton of work that's done that I do within trafficking and just helping educate and navigate these things. And the biggest struggle that they have is they get somebody that they don't have the resources to support, and they need a list of resources where they can route that person to, because everyone's kind of trying to do their own thing in all these cities, but yet they all need to be, there's almost like there needs to be an organization that connects all of them, right? That's their biggest struggle within the trafficking, within the rescuing of trafficked women and girls and boys. And yeah, it's just so heartbreaking. So I'd be happy to connect you or get her
that would
name
be
so
awesome.
I can connect them.
Yeah.
So if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, also in process, but I do have a website, uprisemn.com.
Okay.
And if you go there, then it gets you to all my handles like Instagram and Facebook. That's kind of being built out, but I do speaking for events and for retreats and things that I'm not personally hosting as well. So I wanted to have a landing page for just how to find me.
What's your favorite thing to speak on, Louise?
I think it's on this. It's on purpose. It's finding your purpose, and hearing God's voice, like walking with him. I'm working on some stuff on the spiritual practice of walking, which would, I'm working on some stuff like that. But I like to create experiences, like more than just speaking. Like, let's have an embodied experience where we like can experience God on all levels.
I love that. I love that. That's so good. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on today. It has been such a pleasure. And I feel it's important to touch on, because I have talked about yoga on my show in the past. And I know that the Lord has told me no more yoga, but that doesn't mean that he's told everyone else no more yoga. So I just encourage you, if you've heard me say that in the past, like just check in with the Lord on what he's telling you to do. I think that's super important, is to just connect with him, because for years he told me it was okay. And then he kind of called me into some other areas, and then he told me no more. So I think anyone that's listening to this, like, just so we don't have confused messages, I think it's important that every single person discern what the Lord's telling them. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Louise, it's just been such a
Aw.
pleasure to have you on, and I just adore you, and I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to join you on one of your hiking outings, but probably not in winter because I'm kind of a wimp. We'll see.
I
We'll
get
see.
it.
I don't know what's
I
going to
totally
happen
get
there. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. Take care.
We'll see you next time.